Hi, this is sort of a three-in-one tutorial to try to show three different aspects of what we're doing in our design course. Number one, I wanted to introduce PhotoPea as an Adobe Photoshop alternative that is browser-based, and it works really well for this exercise. Number two, I wanted to show some design principles as we construct a graphic logo or banner for a video project. And number three, I also wanted to demonstrate how you can learn from videos, YouTube videos in particular. I find it's really nice because you can pause at any time. You can rewind and get clarification on things. You can fast forward if you already know some stuff. But I would suggest stick with this program, learn what you can, watch these tricks, and add it to the information and the skills that you already have. So here we go. Number one, as we go to PhotoPea, that's photopea.com, the first trick I'm going to strongly suggest to you is hit the F11 key. F11 will take PhotoPea and blow it up to full size, get rid of the browser look, and now it behaves and looks very much like Photoshop. There are ads along the side. That's how they get their money, so good enough for them. And once you get started with this, okay, let's get started with this particular project. We're going to make a graphic that's going to go into a video project. And because it's a video project, normally we have some defaults that look like this. We're going to go to Screen, and I'm going to choose Full High Def. That's 1080p, 1920 by 1080. It's possible you might want to go with a 720p if that's the size of the graphics or the size of the videos that you render. But in this case, let's go for that full size. And the next trick, this is our canvas. I'm going to hit Control-0 on the numeric keypad. I always use the Enter key and the numbers on the numeric keypad at the far right of my keyboard. Control-0 blows it up to full size. Actually, Control-1 zooms it up to 100%. Control-0 just fills the screen. And that's where I want to get started. I'm also going to do this. Follow along with me. I'm going to show the rulers on this particular canvas. And you see the little ruler bar has gone up. And before I get started, I'm going to add some guidelines to this so that I know where I want to place my image. You see the rulers have numbers across the top, so I'm going to click on this ruler and drag to bring out a guideline that's going to snap right about 200 pixels or so. In fact, it told me that that was 200. And I'll do the same thing down. I'm going to snap it. I'm holding the Shift key as I go down, and it goes in 10 pixel increments so I can get exactly 200 pixels. Down near the bottom, I mean, it's going to 1080, so I guess I want to go to 10. No, that doesn't make sense for 200 pixels. I would like to go to 980? Or 880, of course. And that should be it. Doesn't look square. 1080, that should be it. Yep, must be it. Do the same thing way over here, going to 1920. Doing math is hard. So I think that's going to be 1720. And now I have sort of a frame around the outside of this. These are external margins, and we call this title safe. We don't want to have any text that's going to be outside of these margins. Everything, all the good stuff should be happening on the inside. All right. Next, I want to add some graphics and some text to this. It's going to be a pretty simple one. And here's one of the best ways I found to do that. I have a folder around here somewhere, and in this folder I have my artwork all stashed, and I've got a shortcut to where my artwork goes. I really like using right mouse click and pinning things to quick access, or unpinning them if you don't need them anymore, so that you can get to them really quickly in your file manager. And I'm going to go grab a bulldog. A way to test out graphics is to drag them from the file manager into your canvas. Another way to do this, by the way, like I can take this one, for instance, I can drag it up instead of on the canvas, drag it up into the tabs at the top of PhotoPea, and it'll show you exactly what this is. It has your original project here. Okay, there's a bulldog that might do for us. I was looking for something that was transparent, and I'm pretty sure this is one that's transparent here, so I think I like this one better. And I can tell it's got some transparency because it shows the checkerboard pattern behind it. So that's the one I really want to use. And frankly, the easiest way to get it there is just to go right back to my canvas and drag it right on top of my canvas. And it will size this. So it is filling the canvas. It's actually a very big graphic that I have here, but it's restrained the size of it so it fits within the constraints of my canvas. And this is plenty big, so I'm just going to kind of leave it there for now. You'll notice it's still sort of in a temporary mode. It's waiting for me to hit the check mark up at the top. Well, there it is there. A quick way to do the check mark is instead hold down Control and hit the Enter key in your numeric keypad at the very far right side, and that locks it in place. Seals the deal, and it's now one of the layers that I have to work with. I can move this thing. It defaults to the selection tool, so I can just move this out of the way. And I'm going to add some text to this now. Okay, text tool is here. Text tool usually picks up whatever your foreground color is, and there's my foreground color here. I always start with just black, and then I'll add color to it later, just to see what the shape of the letters looks like. And because this is high def, I'm going to take this thing all the way up to the maximum size, 150 pixels, before I start typing. And the font that it's going to use under that text tool is, let's see, it says it's called Convergence. Okay. Oh yeah, I was messing around with fonts before. These fonts are very atypical. They're not your standard fonts, it seems. I think they are licensed by PhotoPea. They might be public domain, so I'm going to grab one like Comprehension and I'll try it with the text tool. Click anywhere. Okay, it's loaded up the font. And I'm going to type the name of our program, which is Bulldog Banter. Now, it actually had the foreground color already loaded up there from an earlier project. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to move it over. Thought it would pick up the foreground color from this, but no. And in the typography of it, I can look at this font and say, yeah, geez, kind of strange looking and stuff. Okay, so maybe I can highlight it all and change it to something that looks a little more conventional. I could go with something like that. Okay, there's a sans serif font or a modern font. And if you study your fonts, you know there are some that look way better than others. You know what, I can go with this. This is a serif font that I think is going to do the job. But something that I think works really well in this case is I'm going to use all uppercase letters. Bulldog Banter. That'll do. And something else that's going to work well for me is, I guess I better move this on over. And I'm just double clicking and it's picking up the text, going right into the text editor of it. I'm going to Control X and I'm going to separate Bulldog from Banter so that I can manipulate them individually. Now to get out of this as a text object, you can click on your selection tool, or again, Control and the Enter key in the bottom right corner sort of gets you out of whatever mode it was, in this case text editing. I'm still, oh no I don't. I get my text tool back, I can click and I can paste because I cut the word Banter out. I can paste it and I can get those words back like this. Now here's the interesting thing is we now have 3 layers, Banter, Bulldog, and Bulldog logo, and we can change the order of these things. I'll put Bulldog in front of Banter just because it makes more sense in my brain. I do want the logo to be in the back. I don't want them to interfere, so I'm going to start moving these things around just a little bit. And if I want a shortcut to get back to the selection tool, V on your keyboard snaps it back into selection mode, so I can grab the Bulldog and I can move it over. I'm going to start to work with this and start playing with the typography now. So typography, we're using 4 principles: proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. And I'm going to play with these 3 elements using those words in those orders, or in that order. So let's start first of all with proximity. Proximity is the size and the spatial relationship between these elements. So first of all, that Bulldog is way too huge. And because I'm in full screen mode with PhotoPea, I used F11, I can grab that Bulldog. Notice when I grab these objects, it changes the layers over here. That's a good thing. When I grab the Bulldog, Control T will let me transform the Bulldog. Be careful with Control T. Don't grab a side handle. If you do, it will swish it. I'm going to hit Escape. When you use this Control T, hold down the Shift key and always use a corner handle, and it will shrink things but maintain the aspect ratio. So in this particular case, I'm going to shrink it so it's considerably smaller sized. I want to keep most of it inside that title safe, but I have it bleeding over the title safe just a little bit. And I think that's good enough, so I'm going to hit Control Enter and be happy with that. Bulldog Banter, here's another trick for you. I can move both of those objects at the same time if I hold down Control and click to select both the layers, and now they will both move because they're both selected. And I'm already shaping up a logo that's okay, going the right direction. If I want to deselect, I can Control click one of those things. Or I can just click outside and click the object that I want. And what I want to do here is, let's see, Bulldog and Banter. Okay, I'm going to play with proximity some more. Proximity, they're about the right size, but I think I'd like to, well, let's move it like this a little bit. Yeah, up and down. So that's kind of doing the job. Something like this. I'm still not quite happy though. I've got a serif font up top. I think I'd like to have a sans serif font at the bottom. This is sort of foreshadowing into contrast. Contrast is a good thing. So I'm going to see if I can find a sans serif font. I'm just looking at the little previews here, and it looks like Convergence is a pretty good sans serif font. So I'm going to go with that. Okay. Now, proximity is how big things are and how small things are. Banter is smaller than the word bulldog. I want to put the emphasis on banter. So I can make it bigger. Control-Enter, because I don't want to edit the text. With Control-T. And if I could just kind of line these things up. Well, here's a way you can line things up. Use those guidelines. Now, I'm going to zoom in to make this a little easier. Here's a trick. You can use the magnifying glass, but I don't want to let go of the current tool I have here. So here's a shortcut to zooming. Control spacebar gives you a magnifying glass temporarily. And I can click it a few times. If I hold down Alt, I can reverse the magnification. And here's another trick. If I let go of Control and just use spacebar, it gives me a hand tool that I can move this thing around. Whoops. And I don't know why that tab just came up, but it did. F11, close tab. Sometimes I have these tabs pop out of nowhere. Everything's okay though. It's still back on this tab. I'll hit F11 again. Oh, and I still have the tab tool. Okay, good. Sorry, the hand tool to move things around. Okay, so we're in pretty good shape. Now I'm going to use those guidelines again to try to get this thing aligned, and it snaps to the edge of these text objects. So I'm going to put a guideline at each side of this. Now I can grab that banter, and this is leading into the A of PARC, the alignment. If I place this thing where I want it, okay, I want to have banter about that far away from it, I can now grab the bottom right corner, hold Shift, and I can expand the size of this, and it will snap to that guideline to make sure I have perfect full justification between bulldog and banter. And I've just achieved two of the principles, proximity and alignment, at least for these two objects. But I'm going to keep on playing with this, sculpting it a little bit. Maybe what I want to do is I would like to make banter really strong, so I'll go up to a style and see if I have bold. I do not. Oh well. Here's another thing that I think that I might try doing. Whoops. I'm going to go to bulldog. Okay, I can double click it and get access to it. I'm going to take the emphasis off of bulldog by doing something called kerning and making bulldog smaller. By putting spaces in between the letters, I can space out bulldog a whole lot more. And like I say, this is normally something called kerning, which this doesn't seem to let me do. But now I can do a Control-T, hold down the space bar so I can slide over here and see the whole thing. And I'll hold Shift, grab the top right, slide it down till the guidelines get there. And I've just really resized this in terms of proximity. The word banter is now the dominant word, and that's kind of what I want for this title. I want it to be all about the banter, with the bulldog sort of being an adjective or an adverb or some English thing. Okay, so here we go. We have now got some sizes that are about right. We've got some alignment that's happening just about where I want it. We've got the proximity just about there. Once again, I think maybe what I'll do is, now that I got this, I don't think that I need those. Well, no, I'll keep the guidelines for now, but I'm going to transform both of these objects at the same time. I highlighted both layers, did a Control-T, and now I want to keep, well, I want to keep it in the title safe area. So I'll go like that, and I'll go like this. And I'm looking at the alignment too of the elements of this graphic element with this one. Maybe what I want to do is I want to have bulldog banter be sort of aligned with the bottom of the JM. That's maybe not a bad idea. I think I'll try that for now. Alternatively, I could try to make it sort of full justification, but I'd have to make this way bigger and JM way smaller. And I'm not sure if I want to do that. So I think I'm going to leave it right about there. And now we're into the repetition. PAR, R stands for repetitive, repetition. It's also rules. And I'm going to make some rules for myself. And I've already kind of imposed them, not intentionally. The color rules that we have here. I want to stick with just a few colors that make sense together. And I'm going to show you how to use the color picker to do that. So I've got, well, let's pick on banter, I guess, here for now. The color's coming from this up here. And if I wanted to match the color of the graphic that I have, because it's a standard color, I could actually use that color picker and click on that blue, and it'll change the color to that one. So it matches perfectly. And I was playing around with this earlier. Let's see, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to do the same sort of thing. I'm going to double click the letters, click the color picker, click this. But here's something that you can do. The color picker works on 3 different dimensions. It has a hue. The hue of this blue is picked out exactly, and that is exactly the right part of the rainbow where it comes from. We also have saturation. Saturation is how colorful something is. Further to the right is more colorful, further to the left is duller. And then we have the height of this thing up and down. This is the tone, how light or dark it is. So if I did want to have a lighter or darker version of this, well, let's take Bulldog and let's make it a little darker with about the same saturation. I could click it down here, say OK, and Control Enter to see what it looks like. And then I've just changed the look of this thing a little bit. Now, I want to have more distinction between this than I have right now. I'm going to be playing around with this a little bit. I also want to put more emphasis on banter and make it look a little more interesting. So I'm actually going to take that, and I think I might make it a little bit more saturated. I'll go use the color picker. I'll make it more saturated over here. Maybe I'll make it a little bit brighter than the logo. Generally speaking, saturated colors can be a little more hurting on the eyes, but in this particular case, we want this thing to stand out a little bit like that. And I want to have a little more distinction of the word Bulldog too. So here's the next principle I'm going to get to. So we've been through proximity, alignment, repetition, and now I want to go for contrast. And right now, you know, it's looking okay, but we can make it a little more exciting with more contrast. That is, we have dark letters and dark letters. What if we had light letters and dark letters? So I'm going to take Bulldog, and I'd like to give it some light letters. And here's the way I'm going to do that. I'm going to put an object behind there. I got 1, 2, 3 objects. I'm going to go to the background because I want to put something like a stripe behind the whole thing. And I'll just use this rectangle object. And I can choose my fill in advance, so I'm going to choose, you know what, I'll choose that same color. Or did I? No, I don't think it did. I'm going to close this. I don't want that. Did it make an object? No, it did not. Okay, good. Okay, so I thought I was choosing the fill color of this. Oh, I got to click on that object there. That's what it is. I have to click on the color picker there before I click it there. Good. Now I can make a stripe that just goes across all the way from one side to the other. This is a vector shape. In fact, the letters are vector shapes too. And they can be stretched and moved around. They don't make big blurry pixels. If I enlarge the Bulldog logo, it's made of pixels right now, and it's rasterized. And so it would start to look a little bit dumb if I made it bigger. Start to look a little jaggy and aliased. But in this case, I can play around with the Bulldog and the banter and keep on playing with the sizes. So now I got some contrast going to it, but I don't have good contrast between the letters of Bulldog and banter. So let's go back to Bulldog. Let's change it. And you know what really goes well with everything is black and white. So using just white against any color, any dark tone, will make Bulldog look fine. So now I got something that's looking okay. Like it's very legible for sure. And it's got maybe a little bit of style. I can still improve this a little bit. A Control T on this object. I don't want it to be quite so high. I want it to sort of balance the word Bulldog in the middle of it like this. So that's pretty good. That's doing the job. And you know what? It's not contrasting enough with what's going on there with the JM. So I might change that color a little bit. Now, to change the color of it, notice it's got a selection around the outside. I want to deselect that, get rid of it. You can click on the selection tool and just click anywhere, or I like the shortcut for it, Control D. Deselects. So yeah, it's blending in a little bit too much with this. I want to create a little more distinction. So if you want to manipulate this object, you can select it, go back to the tool that you used to make it, and then you can see its fill color. And I think this worked last time. Let's see what would happen if I made it a darker version of that same color. Okay, so now it's got a little bit more contrast with this graphic element. I think that's kind of doing the job. I'll say okay with that. So that is through some of those basics. But I'm going to add a few enhancements to this now. That's our design principles. Inside of PhotoPea or Photoshop, there are some additional styles that we can use to distinguish this a little bit more too, and I wanted to throw those at you and then export it. So here we go. With every layer that we've created here, we have styles that we can impose. And styles will make things stand out, get embossed, all sorts of different effects that you can play on them that don't affect the original pixels, and you can change these things around until you get what you like. So I'm going to start with the graphic down here. And something that can make it pop, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a nice little style to add to it. If you select the layer and go up to the layer option at the top, you can go down to something called a layer style, and I'm going to add a drop shadow to it, just a subtle drop shadow. You can control exactly how much you get. It's checked off there with distance, and sometimes that can look pretty cheesy, so I'm going to be a little more subtle. Certainly with things like size and spread and opacity. You know, you don't want it to look too dark and moody. You just want to add a little bit of flavor to this to give this thing a bit of a three-dimensional look, something subtle like that. I'm going to say okay. Banter, you know, it's depends on what banter is looking like, but let's see what we can do with banter as well. Click on banter. Here's another shortcut. Instead of going all the way up here to layer and style, you can try double clicking on the right side of the layer and it brings up the same controls, but you have to select them, the choices from here. We'll try the same thing with a drop shadow and add that to banter. The trouble with drop shadows is they can compete a little bit with darker letters. Now think of tone. We do not want to have something that is like 60% gray here meeting up with a 60% blue because it clashes. It just makes it look bigger and blurrier. So there's another thing we can try doing and see if it works. We could add a stroke to it. Now a red stroke looks really bad, but once again, what goes really well with just about everything is white and black. So what if we added a little white stroke to that to make it pop out? Okay, that's kind of doing the job. Again, with that stroke, we have control. How many pixels do we want to have that stroke size be? And no, you do not want to have that gross sort of marshmallow look. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. You know what? I'm going to go with the standard of 5, which should do the job. We don't want to eat into this thing too much. It does give you the option of having the stroke be in the center or being on the inside, but in this case, the outside makes way more sense, so it separates it from the shadow a little bit. And I'm going to say okay with that. Finally, with word bulldog. Bulldog is really thin right now. I don't want to eat away from it too much. The contrast is good, so it's pretty easy to read. There is maybe a little something we can try, but I don't know if it's going to be a good idea or not. Let's try bevel and emboss with that. A bevel and emboss makes it look like it stands out a bit, and it thins up the letters as well. But you be the judge of it. You know, too much is kind of gross. The size and the style of it, I'm going to make it a chisel, so it looks like it's just a little bit separated from the background. And you know what? Can I zoom in on it? I can't. I'm going to say okay for now and zoom in just so we can see exactly what's going on with it. And we can go back into the effect by clicking this little right arrow here. Oh no. Clicking on the effect twice. Bevel and emboss. And yeah, these letters are so thin, I'm not sure if we're going to get away with it. Yeah. Size is 100. You know, I mean, a little bit like that might be cool, but I wouldn't go too much more than that. And how dark it is, that's its opacity that's there. I mean, doesn't look like it's giving us too much control over that. Oh yeah, there it is. The depth is 50%, the size is 3 pixels. I hope I was doing the right thing before. The opacity is 75. I think we can make it lighter or darker. Maybe not. Hope I have the right one. Okay, I'm just going to say okay and leave well enough alone. Control 0, and I can zoom back. Anyway, there's the basis of a graphic. And we're just under 25 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this thing up. Hope you've learned a little bit out of this. You don't want to overuse these effects. You don't want to be gross about it. You want them to be just like a little bit of seasoning on the meal that you've just prepared. The real thing that you're doing here is playing with PARC and getting the thing to look good from a distance and easy to read. I'm going to now do what I should have done a long time ago. If you've got something and it's going the right direction, file, save as PSD, make sure you save this thing. And I'm up to my 5th version of this. Also revise. You know, once you make one, great, try it again. Do something completely different. I'll show you a couple other ones that I did already that are just way different than this one, just because I want to pick the best version that I can. And after saving the PSD of it, so you can go back and edit it, if you're happy and you're ready to deliver it to your client or ready to use it, export as, and you can export as a PNG or a JPEG. I'm going to export this one as a PNG this time. It's 1080 by, it's 1920 by 1080. Hit save. It's going to pick up the same name that you used before. Oh no, it's not. I guess you have to name it. So I'm going to call this Bulldog Banter V5 and hit save so I can give that to my client. Okay. And just for the fun of it, just to show you what went on before, earlier designs, this is all using the same principles. There was a version, whoops, I'll put it up here. Again, you can preview these things. So there was, oh yeah, that's an earlier version that I was messing with. Here's another version that I was messing with. And here's an even earlier version that I was messing with. And look, there's another version that I was messing with. And if you have the variation of these things, you take a look and say, it's all the same principles, just different elements in different locations to see which one suits you best, and post those on your portfolio. Oh, we're 25 minutes and 46 seconds. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you learned something. Good luck. Try it for yourself. I hope this helped you with PhotoPea and design principles. Now try it for yourself and good luck.